SBN, Sports Business Now. SBN is a division of Row 27, the digital sports marketing company, celebrating 5 years of creating TV spots, intro videos, and microsites for over 150 teams. See our work at row27.com. And by FanMaker, digital marketing tools for sports teams, featuring FanMaker Rewards, the most comprehensive and popular fan loyalty and reward system. Learn more about our apps at fanmaker.com. SBN Live.
Hey sports fans, welcome to SBN Live episode 35, where sports marketing and technology meet. My name is Max Huber, your host of the show, joined today by two handsome gentlemen. On my left, Row 27 account executive Tim Dobbins, and on our magic screen of wonderment, the founder of the Sports Business Exchange, Josh DeBoff. Josh, how are we doing today?
Doing well. It's a beautiful day here in New York.
Nothing wrong with that. Tim, how's life in the Row 27 world?
Pretty well. I'm glad we got the dream team back together for this week.
Got the dream team together. And speaking of dream team, we're going to move on to my favorite soccer star, football star, as some might say, in the world. Our first story today is about Puma, and they're bringing in Thierry Henry to launch a virtual football community. So this community that allows fans to engage with football stars such as Henry and Cesc Fabregas and others will include star challenges offering fans a chance to win prizes, including signed boots and product discounts. Henry will host a star challenge that invites people to propose creative suggestions for players to carry out both on and off the pitch, and the most innovative ideas winning prizes. So We've seen in the world that there are social media platforms such as Facebook that is open to completely everybody. This one's going to concentrate more on soccer or football stars, especially those that are wearing and sporting Puma. We've seen this before in some other realms, but I like it being a soccer fan. Josh, what are your thoughts on this? And could you see this taking off with some other sports?
Yeah, I like the idea as well. I think, even though there are a lot of open platforms these days, some of the brands are looking to bring things more in-house than they used to, and then just let users kind of disseminate the information that they get from the microsite that they're using out to their own social networks. So I think Puma is following the footsteps of someone like Gatorade that's been doing that for the last few months with their Win From Within program. So Gatorade's had a very successful site where not only can you build your own Gatorade bottle, but there are other ways to work with some of the Gatorade endorsers and do things with them and engage them on the site. So I think Puma's taking a cue from Gatorade, I don't know, directly or indirectly, and trying to create the same thing. Soccer is a very popular sport. There's a ton of people out there. I'm interested to see if there will be any crossover with the Red Bull and Henry's team here in the U.S., but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it's I've seen a few things like this. Being a NASCAR fan, and NASCAR's done with this, and with the social media aspects. PGA Championship had a pick the pin on the 15th hole of the fourth round, so things are growing. People are always trying to do something new. Tim, what are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Yeah, I think one of the best parts of this is just the simplicity of it. One of the keys to kind of having a successful crowdsourced campaign is to make participation be as easy as it possibly can. So in this case, people are encouraged to be creative, or I guess daring, if you're on the top of a mountain playing soccer. But I think anything that encourages participation from your consumers or potential consumers is going to be great. Also seems that they're kind of holding some of these future aspects of the campaign tight to the chest, not necessarily releasing them yet. It's just the photo campaign at this point, but there'll definitely be more engaging things coming down the pipeline. Like Josh said, the instant sharing to the social networks is another great way to expand the reach of it.
Well, very cool. You talked about participation. I'm going to have Tim now talk about a story that people are pulling their participation.
Lack of participation,
in a little thing that we like to call EA Sports.
Yep. So basically a month after the NCAA announced that it wasn't going to license its trademarks anymore to EA Sports, it's now had 3 major conferences in the Big Ten, let's see, what is it? Big Ten, SEC, and Pac-12 earlier this week announced that they will no longer be licensing the conference trademarks to EA Sports. The schools will still be allowed to make their own individual decisions, but I guess let's start with Max. Do you think that this is kind of, do schools still have, carte blanche to license with the NCAA, or is this more than a suggestion from the conferences telling their schools, hey, you shouldn't do this?
Obviously, the schools can make up their own choices, but I see that this is the conferences saying, we're not doing it, and it's kind of a nudge, hey, maybe you shouldn't be partaking in this. And with three powerhouses like the Big Ten, Pac-12, and the SEC pulling out, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But you do have some major brands within those. Michigan, you've got Ohio State, Alabama, Stanford, just to name a few. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I think this is these conferences saying to these schools, we're not going to get involved. It might be in your best interest to not get involved. Maybe this will be a great thing for conferences like the MAC, like some of the other smaller ones that are just on the cusp underneath these to really get their brand recognition out there. But as a whole, it's just it really takes a lot away from the EA Sports game to lose three major groups like this. It'll be interesting to see what Josh has to say about this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously based on the Ed O'Bannon case that's been going on for a long time now. But I think if universities aren't going to back out of their contract with EA Sports or not renew at least, it's just simply an invitation for a review from the NCAA because we know that they're not for it at this point. The conferences aren't for it, and clearly there's a reason for that. So there's an invitation right there for someone from the NCAA to come in and be like, hey, what's actually going on here? And we know that none of the schools like when the NCAA gets involved in what they're doing on campus. So it's probably in everyone's best interest just to part ways, not only with EA Sports, but anything similar to that as well. EA Sports, from their perspective, they're a very huge gaming brand at this point. They have other games. It's not like the college football is their only game. So they'll still have Madden, and they'll still have the other sports as well. So I'm not really concerned about EA, from that perspective at all.
Yeah, I think, one interesting thing to take into account here is, that EA could potentially, if they see a domino effect, like Max mentioned, maybe the MAC or other smaller conferences could see an opening here, or it could be some sort of a domino effect where once these smaller conferences see the major powerhouse conferences taking this angle, that they may follow suit and do the same. So it could create a domino effect, but also EA could see an opportunity in this to kind of create a more powerful edit function within the game where people, I guess, more, hardcore gamers, so to speak, could go in there and create team names, conference names, edit the colors and images on uniforms, kind of create their own college football game, so to speak, with everything that they want in there, but none of it would actually be licensed. It would just be created by the individual. So that's an interesting kind of perspective that EA could take, I guess. But let's take it over to Max to introduce something about Fox Sports.
Yeah, Fox Sports 1, we all know that it's trying to take down the ESPN juggernaut. They launch in 3 days' time, but they just struck a deal with Time Warner Cable, DirecTV, and Dish to carry the new Fox Sports 1 moniker and carry it to over 40 million homes. So it's just interesting that there was a major sticking point for cable subscriber fees, and just 3 days away from launch, they were able to finally get this done. It would have been interesting, if it would have fallen through with DirecTV, Time Warner, and Dish, what the outcome would have been for Fox Sports 1. I know that they obviously were hoping to get this done, and they would have gotten it done at some point, but how much revenue they may have lost or already have lost just based on the timing of this. Being a non-cable subscriber, I'm not actually going to get Fox Sports 1. I'll have to go to the bar, I guess.
Does it come on Netflix?
No, it'll. We'll see what happens. I'll go places to watch it. But Josh, this is a major group that's going to come in and try to take down ESPN. What are your thoughts, just overall, of Fox Sports 1 and of this deal getting struck today?
Yeah, I'll take the second half of that first. I'm not really surprised that it took just right up to the end to get the deal done. I really think it was just a form of brinksmanship from both sides. It's fairly common, actually, with new stations that launch to wait till not only right up to the brink of when they are going to launch, but actually let the networks launch and then come up with the contract and the finalized negotiations. It is fairly common practice. There's no real urgency in getting a deadline done way in advance because the network's not even on yet. From my experience, this is actually a fairly common practice that it waits right till the end, if not passes over when the network launches to go through. So I was not at all surprised that it actually happened today. If nothing, a little bit surprised that it happened before the launch in 3 days. In terms of FS1 as a network, competition is a good thing. Fox is the only major network that didn't have it. You had CBS Sports Network, you had NBC-SN, as they now would like to call it, and then obviously ESPN all had their own sports networks, with ESPN being the strongest. I think Fox is really making a big push to go after ESPN and go after a lot of their rights. And you know what? They're doing a lot of promoting for it, and I don't know how they'll do initially. ESPN still has a lot more viewership and carriage across the country. So it'll be interesting to see what Fox uses to gauge success. Is it viewership? Is it revenue? Is it just overall discussion about the network? It's really based on what they decide is their metrics.
Yeah, I think, in order to gauge the success of this network, it's going to take a couple of years because right now, Fox has rights to, I think, UFC, MLB, NASCAR, FIFA soccer, and a couple of conferences, Pac-12 and Big 12, I think. But then kind of looking 4 or 5 years in the future, is this, I think they're estimating it at an 80-cent per subscriber fee, whereas ESPN is over $5.50. Is that going to permit them to kind of compete with ESPN for these, bigger NFL type, Sunday night footballs, the Wimbledons of the world, anything like that? Are they really going to be able to enter that space and compete actively with ESPN for that, given the difference in per subscriber fees? So I think kind of gauging success down the road, that'll be, important thing to look at 4 or 5 years from now. Do you guys think that's going to be a possibility, that they'll be able to compete money-wise to bid for those, really, really high viewership sports?
I think they will. They like you mentioned, they got to make their brand presence known right now. Another thing that'll be interesting in my mind is to see if they have an increased online presence. ESPN obviously is huge online. Fox Sports already is, but with the increased recognition on TV, if there's going to be any alterations to their online presence. Josh, any quick thoughts before we move on that?
Yeah, I agree. Everybody has to start somewhere. So 80 cents isn't really that bad, and ESPN was at 80 cents at one point as well. So I think as Fox gets more coverage and what they're showing on air, their fees will go up as well, and they'll be able to compete with ESPN.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. So Fox Sports 1 probably have all new HD cameras. And the Premier League is doing some camera technology as well, too.
They are, yes, they are. So beginning on Sunday, when Manchester United takes on Wigan Athletic in the annual prelude to the EPL season, referees for the first time will receive an alert to their watch. I assume it's a wristwatch. I'm not entirely sure.
Yep.
When the goal crosses the goal line. So the EPL will be the first domestic league in the world to adopt this technology. It's driven by a series, as Max mentioned, of 7 cameras behind each goal. And it'll be called the Goal Decision System, GDS for short, and was developed by Hawkeye, which is the company that also does the kind of tennis above court views, I guess, to see if the ball hits the line. I think Frank Lampard of the British England national team had to be involved with this somehow after his non-goal in the 2010 World Cup. So will this finally put an end to human error?
Josh, thoughts? We'll go to you first.
Yeah, I mean, we first saw the goal technology was supposed to be in play for the Confederations Cup in Brazil back in June. And, I mean, they had a lot of their own problems, but it was supposed to, with the tournament and protests outside and all that. So I think the fact that they were using this goal line technology kind of got pushed to the back and wasn't really talked about as much. So it's great now that the Premier League is doing it as well. Any form that can make the game more accurate, I think, is great in any sport, not just in soccer/football. I don't think it'll be the end. There's always going to be human error, but if it decreases it's a good step in the right direction.
I like it being a soccer guy. I think, like you mentioned, anytime that you can take that much more error out of the game, it will be interesting for purists. I mean, you saw this in baseball, and we'll get to the baseball in a few seconds here. But with the purists for football, as they call it over there, just they like that the referees and the side judges are part of the game. Hopefully this doesn't take them completely out of it. Obviously, it won't with some of the other rules on the field. But it's an interesting technology, and this is kind of the way things are going. You've seen some stuff in the past with chips inside of the ball and everything. So this one with the 7 cameras, the Premier League's got it. It'll be interesting if La Liga and some of these other major groups out there implement it anytime soon, especially like Josh mentioned, World Cup and Olympics and so forth and so on. But so soccer, they're getting more advanced in their replay technology. So is Major League Baseball. They decided Thursday to implement instant replay on virtually every play, but those that involve the strike zone, including 3 manager challenges per game. They get 1 in the first 6 innings and 2 beyond that. And there's quite a few different rules involved, but Bud Selig is extremely happy with it. He thinks it's an historic day. Hopefully we never have ties again, but, that's Bud Selig's own thing, so we'll see. But they really want to expand it. There's been people calling for it ever since they had the replays called on home run balls. Tim, what are your thoughts, being a baseball purist, I'm going to guess?
I am a baseball purist.
On this whole deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, it's based on Bud Selig's history of decision-making when it comes to replay in the MLB. It almost seems like his hand has been forced by all this kind of fervor over the years, not only from fans, but from, even internally in the league, people wanting it, the managers, the players wanting to see it so badly. So I think, if it were up to him, I'm not entirely sure that this would have gotten done, just because it's been postponed for so long. But now that it is going to be done eventually, I think it's a great thing to, improve the purity of the game, because how can a game be pure if the wrong team wins? So.
Right, and one of the interesting things about it, just like you see in hockey, is that baseball is going to be used the central MLB, the BAM offices in New York, and who will be provided with replay cameras that will be monitored by men with umpiring experience, and they're going to make the final call, kind of like you see in the NHL in Toronto. So they're taking it out of the crew chief's hands. Maybe they're a little heated in the emotion of the game, and might still skew one way or the other. Josh, thoughts on the whole thing?
I pretty much agree. Anything to make the outcome of the game accurate, I'm in favor for. Baseball is such a long game as it is. I hope it doesn't extend the game even further. But I'm sure they'll do a little tweaking to it over the years. But as long as they're getting the calls right, I think that's what's most important.
Yeah, I agree. So we're going to move on to our final story before we got a little clip at the end here. But Facebook, this is a non-sports story, but it could have some sports implications in future years. Facebook is floating a mobile payment service where people can connect their Facebook user account and pair it with a credit card with their login information and to make purchases without entering additional billing data during the checkout process. They're going to trial this right now to a limited single vendor called Jack Threads, where fans can go on and purchase clothes for this. It'll be interesting to see if any major ticket groups or organizations, set up some sort of agreement with Facebook to do this, where fans can go through. They've already got all their data loaded. You've seen this in other places, but it's interesting to see Facebook, the giant social media group out there, kind of getting involved in this payment system. They're always looking for ways to increase revenue, as you see increased ads on Facebook every single day. But I definitely could see this getting a foothold in sports one way or another, whether, like I said, it's with individual teams or with a ticketing group as a whole. Josh, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they work in the sports industry, with ticketing being the obvious one, and perhaps Ticketmaster getting on board, where you can already, you can put in your information from Facebook and see where your friends are sitting at the game. This is just another step, in that same process. It doesn't seem to be too dissimilar from Google Wallet. They're branching out doing the same thing. So I think it should be interesting to see how it works. I'm also interested that they chose Jack Threads as the initial company, since primarily Jack Threads caters to a young male audience. And I wonder if that's the same audience that also is more likely to purchase through Facebook or through even online in general. So I'm not sure. I personally just don't know what the demographics of online payments look like, but I wonder if those are similar.
Yeah, it will be interesting. You could also see merchandise purchases, things of that nature with teams on here, major retailers as well. Tim, I know you've got some comments on this as well.
Yeah, a couple. I mean, first of all, I'm not entirely sure why you wouldn't, just go directly to the site. There are most major retailers in the country, whether it's, whether you're looking to buy apparel or, Ticketmaster or anything like that, they already have their own, capability to either, have a native credit card processing or they go through PayPal. So this is just going to be you giving your personal data to, yet another company. I'm not one of those people that, is nervous about doing that, but, it's more information for Facebook to go ahead and mine and then target ads specifically at you, which I know can be a major kind of a point of contention for a lot of Facebook users that they don't like that. But yeah, I mean, it definitely has its use, whether it's like Josh said, Ticketmaster going in and showing you where your friends are sitting, or just being able to make, in Facebook purchases of your team's apparel without having to be redirected to any other sites. Could make it a little bit more efficient, but overall, I won't be using it.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything that I'm going to use, but we'll see. Josh, any last thoughts before we move on to our That Just Happened moment of the day?
You know what? I may try a credit card that's about to expire and try it once to see what it's like, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, like I mentioned, we're going to go with our That Just Happened moment of the day. We're going to have a video clip here. DeAndre Jordan of the LA Clippers has been known to posterize all sorts of people left and right. And as we're about to see here, he gets posterized by McLovin. That's right, McLovin posterizes DeAndre Jordan in today's That Just Happened moment of the day. DeAndre Jordan can't believe it.
Sorry.
It's kind of a bitter pill to swallow when you get posterized by McLovin. But I want to thank everybody for watching. Check us out on Twitter at SBNow, online at thesportsbusinessnow.com. Make sure to check out Josh's website, thesportsbusinessexchange.com. Also, check him out on Twitter at TSBX. We want to thank him once again for joining us. We're live next Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, with an all-new edition of SBN Live, joined by Matt McCormick of the Minnesota Swarm. Take care.
SBN, Sports Business Now.